097. Mr. Brown, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City of Lake City, Florida, declaring Jake Hill Jr. to have been elected City Council member for District 12 in the August 18, 2020 primary election period.
Is there a motion as the City Council Resolution number 2020-097?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-097.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one?
Well,
Congratulations, Jake.
thank you all. I'm looking forward to another 4 years of working with. Sorry, Melinda, but I'm still looking forward with the little time that you have left.
I'm going to have public comments every meeting.
Looking forward to
it.
Ms. Sykes, you call the roll, please.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, we have City Council Resolution number 2020-098. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, declaring a runoff election between candidates James Crenshaw and Christopher Todd Sampson for Council Member District 13, and establishing a runoff election date of November 3rd, 2020 period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution number 2020-098?
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2020-098.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, we're down to council comments. Anybody have any comments on this meeting?
Well, I just simply like to say, Mayor, to Ms. Moses, I know she's a very short timer now, and I really enjoyed working along with you, Ms. Moses, and sitting beside you. I'm going to miss you. And farewell and congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. I'm going to miss y'all too, but I'll still be around.
Don't change your number, Melinda.
That's right.
Jake, you know I'm going to have my eyes on you. You know it.
Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
We did not have a motion.
Oh, that's right. I'm on. I got sidetracked.
Amen.
Okay. With that, we'll be adjourned till about 5 minutes, and we'll start the next meeting.
The police did a good job. They're gone, aren't they, Mr. Jefferson?
He must have showed up then.
Okay, I've got 6 o'clock if everybody's ready.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll call the September 21st, 2020 City Council meeting for the City of Lake City to order. Again, I'll give the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we'll have the invocation by Council Member Chris Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed on our community. Father, thank you for our first responders and our civil servants. Father, we pray for all persons and families who have been affected by the COVID virus. Father, we ask for your guidance on our decisions when we're making decisions for our community. Father, we hope that what we do is pleasing in your eye. Amen.
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 Yeah.
Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mr. Hill,
Here.
Mr. Jefferson,
Here.
Ms. Moses,
Here.
Mayor Witt,
Here.
Mr. Coberline,
Here.
Mr. Helpenberger,
Here.
Chief Gilmore.
Here.
Okay, no proclamations or minutes. We're to approval of the agenda, and I don't know of any modifications. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second to approve the agenda. Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, we're to do a presentation on fair housing workshop and first public hearing, fiscal year 2019 Small Cities Community Development Block Grant. Mrs. Melissa Fox, are you present to do the presentation?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
All right. The Federal Fair Housing Act, 42 of the U.S. Code prohibits discrimination in housing-related transactions, including the sale, rental, or financing of dwellings. Discrimination includes refusing to rent to someone, steering someone away to a particular type of housing or neighborhood, or enacting zoning measures to exclude particular groups, etc., because of membership in a protected class. What are the protected classes? Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. Now, these are just the federal fair housing protected classes. There could be more with your state and local levels, but these are the federal ones. What is prohibited? No one may take any of the following actions based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. Refuse to rent or sell housing, refuse to negotiate for housing, set different terms, conditions, or privileges for sale or rental of a dwelling, falsely deny that housing is available for inspection, sale, or rental, for profit, persuade, or try to persuade homeowners to sell or rent dwellings by suggesting that people of a particular race, age, sex, etc. have moved or about to move into the neighborhood, or deny any person access to, membership, or participation in any organization, facility, or service related to the sale or rental of dwellings. There is housing protection for families with children. It is unlawful to discriminate against a person whose household includes one or more minor children who are under 18 years of age. This is known as familial status, and it's in which one or more minor children live with a parent or legal custodian. There's additional protection if you have a disability. If you have a physical or mental disability, including hearing, mobility, or visual impairments, cancer, chronic mental illness, or HIV/AIDS that substantially limits one or more major life activities, or are regarded as having such a disability, a housing provider may not refuse to let you make reasonable modifications to your dwelling at your expense. A landlord may permit changes only if you agree to restore the property to its original condition when you move. For instance, if you are in a wheelchair and you need a ramp to get into your home, a landlord may permit you to put that ramp in at your expense. Now, they also may require you to, when you move, to remove the ramp. But as long as you're doing minor modifications like that, a landlord needs to let you do that, as well as a building with a no pets policy. If you're blind and you have a visually impaired tenant and you have a seeing eye dog, they need to be able to let you have that dog. What housing is exempt? The Federal Fair Housing Act exempts owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units and a single-family housing sold or rented without the use of a broker. Senior housing exemption. This exempts some senior housing facilities and communities from liability for familial status discrimination. These are the 62 plus or 55 plus communities. Now, they need to be provided under any state or federal program that HUD has determined to be specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons and intended for and solely occupied by persons 55 or 62 years of age or older. So it's not something that you can just claim that you are. You have to go through and actually be certified for that. If you think your rights have been violated, you can contact the following. You can actually start on the local level with the City of Lake City. They do have a fair housing ordinance, and in it lists the steps on how to address any complaints that they receive. You can do it on a state level with the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and the number for that is 850-488-7082. On a regional level, you can contact the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in Atlanta, Georgia. The number for that is 1-800-440-8091. And then on a federal level, you can contact U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. And the number for that is 1-800-669-9777. Now, what you will need to provide when you make your complaint: your name and address, the name and address of the person your complaint is against, the address or other identification of the housing involved, a short description of the alleged violation, and the dates of the alleged violation. And like I said earlier, there is a local fair housing ordinance that the City of Lake City has that includes steps and time limits in which complaints must be submitted and responses provided. What happens when you file a complaint? The office receiving the complaint will notify the person filing the complaint and the alleged violator of the filing of your complaint and allow the respondent time to submit a written answer to the complaint. The office will investigate your complaint and determine whether there is a reasonable cause to believe that the respondent violated the Fair Housing Act. The office will notify you and the respondent if they cannot complete their investigation within 100 days of filing your complaint and provide a reason for the delay. Now, during the complaint investigation, HUD is required to offer you and the respondent the opportunity to voluntarily resolve your complaint with a conciliation agreement. Are there any questions on the information that was presented? And there's no action that needs to be taken. This was just for information purposes.
I have any questions? Ms. Fox, now we should open the public hearing for your PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, we can move on to that then.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing and Ms. Fox will do a presentation.
All right. The City of Lake City is eligible to apply for a community development block grant in the amount of $750,000 for the following three categories: housing rehabilitation, commercial revitalization, and neighborhood revitalization. The city is eligible to apply for up to $1.5 million in the economic development category. We'll go over the first three categories. Number one, housing rehabilitation. This is where the city would go in and they would either provide minor to major rehab or replacement, demo replacement to owner-occupied low to moderate income homes within the city. You typically can address about 10 homes, depending on the type of work that needs to be done. And you're addressing, they have to be owner occupied, they have to be within the city limits of the city, and they have to address low to moderate income, and you have to address all code violations. So you can't just go in there and just pick, oh, they can get a new roof or something. It has to be all code violations have to be addressed. Under the commercial revitalization, that's where you're doing streetscapes, sidewalks, pedestrian malls. You can even include parks if they're zoned that way, building facade work, anything like that you're doing in your downtown commercial area. The service area needs to be a minimum of 51% low to moderate income. And in this case, in a commercial, your service area is actually the entire city limits because the entire city can utilize your downtown area. And the third is the neighborhood revitalization. And this is where you're addressing infrastructure items in your residential areas. You're doing street paving, you're doing water line, sewer line, work like that, replacement, either new sewer lines or just sewer line replacement, new water lines, new water line replacement. You might do sidewalks, you might do neighborhood parks. Anything like that that you're doing in the residential area would fall under your neighborhood revitalization category. And there again, it has to be a minimum of 51% to even be eligible. So if you're doing a street paving project, 51% of the homes that live on that street have to be low to moderate income. So it's a little different than commercial. It's not the entire city. It's just those people that would actually benefit from the project. The fourth is an economic development, and that's where you're going to encourage businesses to either come into the city or a business that's already there but needs to expand. You're going to provide infrastructure on city easement or property to facilitate a new business or the expansion. So if for some reason you had a company that wanted to come in, but they needed a new water main out to the property, or they needed a deceleration lane, anything like that, you could apply for CDBG funds to do that. And then in return, the developer, that new business, they would hire for every $34,999.99 that they receive in CDBG funds, they agree to hire and retain for up to a year one low to moderate income person there in the city. So it provides jobs for the city, as well as it provides that business with the infrastructure that they need to either relocate or to expand. Now, when we talk about the LMI, that is set by HUD. Every year they update, and it's set by county. So under this, it would be under Columbia County. So just to give you an idea, for a family of 4, the total household income could not exceed $44,800. And how you determine that is you would have to do a door-to-door survey. So for everybody that's benefiting, you would go in and you would ask, you know, is your income within a certain range? And then after, if they're above that, then they're over income. But if they're within that, then they're considered low to moderate income. Now these CDBG applications, they are competitive. So you're competing with other small cities and counties in the state of Florida. So we always try to encourage a community, if they can, to have additional points in your application. There's two ways you can do that. One is to provide leverage. If the city shows and commits $2,000 of leverage, you get an extra point, up to 25 points. So a maximum of $50,000 in leverage would get you the full points of 25 points in your application. That would be on top of your score. And then for neighborhood revitalization and commercial revitalization, if when you submit your application, you submit plans and specifications that have been signed and sealed, they are ready to bid plans, and all your permits have been applied for, you get an extra 50 points. The state considers that to be shovel ready. It shows that you are committed to this project, so they give you an extra 50 points in your application. Now you can't be, if you are funded, you cannot be reimbursed for the cost of the preparation of those plans and specs. That's something that you take on your own in hopes to, you know, further your chance of getting funded. And there's steps that are required. And the first is to appoint a Citizens Advisory Task Force, a CATF. That has been completed. The second is to advertise and hold a CATF meeting, and that was completed. We actually held that CATF meeting on August 28th of this year, and I'll be going over later after public comment what their motion and approval was. Advertise and hold a first public hearing to obtain public comment and direction by the commission to move forward on a project. That's what we're here tonight for. Advertise and hold a fair housing workshop. We just held that previously. That actually gets you points in your application. You get an extra 5 points for conducting that. And then the fifth would be to advertise and hold a second public hearing to finalize the application. At that point, we're actually presenting a draft copy of the application and the project narrative. We're going over the project in detail. And then we're asking for the public comment. If there's any comments on the proposed project, if there's anything else that they would like to, you know, see undertaken. And then after that, we would ask for approval to submit the application either with revisions or as is. Are there any questions?
Anybody got any questions?
Are you looking for questions from the public, Mayor?
Yes, we would need to address any questions from the public at this time before anything else.
Mr. Bowden has his hand raised.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I got my hand raised. I don't guess Audrey can tell me how to do this. I have it up, but I had raised my hand because I want to speak to the public comments during this meeting, as well as to the resolution dealing with the bad debt. So I didn't raise my hand to speak to this specific item.
Okay, you want to speak to this issue and which other one?
No, I don't want to speak to this. I want to speak at the time for the public comments during this meeting and to the resolution that deals with the bad debt collection.
Okay.
I think that's resolution 97 or 94, but the one that deal with the bad debt collection.
Okay.
But I do want to speak at the time the public can address the council during this meeting.
Okay, on just the general topics, right?
Hey, yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
right.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
Nobody
After-
else has their hand raised.
Okay,
All right, so if there's no public comment, then I will go over what the CATF recommended. They did meet and they did review all the different categories, and one of their main concerns was providing safe and housing for the community. It was their recommendation that the city pursue a CDBG grant application in the housing rehabilitation category. Now, I believe that staff also has a recommended project that they would like to present as well.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to address the council on this too.
sure.
Okay, the city of Lake City was approved for Wilson Park Phase 2 improvements to, and they submitted a grant application to TDC that was subsequently awarded to the city of Lake City It was a $150,000 reimbursable grant for this project. The city then had engineering design done for the amphitheater, and $130,000 of the grant funds were spent by the city of Lake City. The total project must be done before the city can get reimbursement for the money already spent. By doing this design work up front, the city is awarded extra points while applying for the $750,000 Community Development Block Grant for public facilities. The city's also applied for permitting for this project, which once granted has a window of time to complete the work. Additional items include fencing, lighting, landscaping around the amphitheater. We even have a 3D slide presentation on that project that could be, it was brought and presented to Altruis and other civic organizations and was well received by their memberships. The Tourist Development Council is also very excited about the project. If you would go in this direction, you'd need to select the commercial revitalization approval for this project. Once it would be approved, I believe this project could be done fairly quickly, and then we could turn around and apply for other projects and try to get as many cycles of this grant as possible for the community.
Okay. Any comments to council?
I mean, I'd like to see us go ahead and complete Wilson Park, you know, while we have the plans and while we have the TDC willing to help us out with that now, while they have the money. So
Okay, is that a motion?
that's a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I second, Mr. Mayor.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Fox, is there anything additional you need us to do?
There's not. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We'll close the hearing and we'll move into the budget hearing. The purpose of this public meeting is to accept input from all interested parties relating to the discussion, consideration, and final approval of the city's 2020-2021 proposed millage rate and operating budget. We offer the opportunity to all in attendance to speak in regard to the budget and ask that all speakers identify themselves by name and address. At this time, the city finance director will provide a summary of budget process and address those items essential to compliance with the state of Florida truth and millage trim requirements.
The City Council proposes a final millage rate of 4.9000 mils and a final capital and operating budget of $60,021,932 for fiscal year 2020-2021. Council action tonight constitutes the final budget hearing as required by state trim criteria and was announced to the general public by advertisement in the Lake City Reporter published on September 17, 2020. During this hearing, the following agenda will be addressed. The council will discuss the 2020-2021 millage and operating budget and allow citizen input as appropriate. The council will direct announcement of the final millage rate proposed for adoption and of any increase, decrease, or no change. The city attorney will read by title millage resolution number 2020-081. The council will adopt millage resolution number 2020-081 on final reading. The city attorney will read by title budget resolution number 2020-082. The council will adopt budget resolution number 2020-082 on final reading.
At this time, I declare the final budget hearing open for public discussion and input, followed by discussion by the city council. Does anybody in the public wish to make a comment at this time?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, is there any comments by council? If there are no further comments regarding this matter, I now ask the city finance director to state for the record the taxing authority, the millage rate to be adopted, the rollback millage rate, and any change the final millage rate represents to the current year's millage.
The City Council of the City of Lake City, as taxing authority, proposes a final tax on all property located within the City of Lake City, Florida, at the rate of 4.9000 mils for the fiscal year 2020-2021 operating budget. The current year proposed operating millage rate is a 0.88% increase from the 4.8571 rollback millage rate as defined by Florida statutes, and represents no change from the previous year's millage rate of 4.9000 mils.
I now ask the city attorney to read millage resolution number 2020-081 by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, adopting a millage rate for the levy of ad valorem taxes for the city for fiscal year 2020 through 2021 and providing an effective date period.
I call for a motion for final adoption of millage resolution 2020-081.
Mr.
Move for the
Mayor, go ahead, Ms. Moses.
Okay. I call for the adoption of resolution 2020-081.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. I now ask the city attorney to read budget resolution number 2020-082 by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2020 through 2021 and providing for an effective date period.
I call for a motion for final adoption of budget resolution number 2020-082.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of resolution number 2020-082.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, I'll close the final budget hearing following the vote. At this time, it's time for the public wishing to address council. I know Mr. Bowden, I believe you just wanted to address it during the resolution.
No, Mayor, he wanted to speak now as well.
That's fine. We'll call Mr. Bowden then.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I did not want to address the city council initially. I just happened to overhear a conversation. I'm sure that Mr. Jefferson didn't realize his back was live, and the rest of you, when the dirt bag was going by his house and making a lot of noise, and I overheard the conversation, and I heard some of the giggling going back and forth, and I just want to make the point that it's really not a laughing matter if you live in this side of town. That might have been an inconvenience today for Mr. Jefferson, but it's an inconvenience for me and my wife almost twice a week on FAMU and on other streets here in North Lake City. And I take exception to the idea that just send the police down here and disperse them and just get them away from me. That doesn't solve the problem, because the senior citizens who live 2 blocks or 5 blocks down the road, they got to deal with the same issue. And they don't have access. They won't call the police, but they still got the same issue. And my view is, and I'm glad the police chief is on this meeting, is that it's not a nuisance, it's illegal. And it needs to be dealt with as such, because as long as we deal with it, that if the dirt bag is by my house, get rid of that noise. It's disturbing. But if 5 blocks down the street from me, I don't care about it. And I just hope that that's not the attitude that's being presented, that just dispersing, I don't care where they go, just get them from by my house. When I call the police about a dirt bag behind my house, I want them to catch them. I don't care if it's 5 blocks from my house or 2 blocks from my house. It's a problem. And I know you all are making light of it, but I want you to know that this is not a issue to be made light of, because if you live north of this railroad track, then you will know that dirt bags going up and down Patterson Street, Martin Luther King, FAMU, Long, Washington, any of those streets are not a one-time a week thing. We hear that every day almost. You know, I'm not going to tell you that come by my house every day, but it's at least twice a week. There going to be some dirt bags flying up and down FAMU behind my house. And I guess I was somewhat disappointed, and I'll say this, and I would say it if it was in a meeting, and you know I don't talk behind people's back. I was disappointed to hear Mr. Jefferson say, well, just this person, I don't care where they go. I think that is irresponsible, to put it mildly. And I would hope that's not the attitude that the police department would take when it comes to that kind of breaking the law in our community, because not only they ride up and down the street at a fast speed, they actually run the red stop sign. They jump over those humps behind my house and go into the air. I mean, they endanger themselves and they're endangering other people. So it's more than just a nuisance. It's more than just noise. It's a violation of the law, and it should be dealt with as such. And I think it's a mistake not to. And I just want to get it off my chest, man, because it bothered me when I overheard it.
And Mr. Bowden, I did want to tell you, I have not forgot about our discussion last week about the letter about the face mask. It will go out hopefully tomorrow, but definitely by Wednesday.
Certainly, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Let me respond for a second here, Mr. Bowden. Mr. Bowden, and I think the record will reflect that I've called the police department many times on this particular problem, but my concern was I was upset by what was going on outside my window at that given moment. And I wanted it immediately removed from here. And that was the reason that I made the comment in that way. But I don't want you to think or get the impression that I'm taking this lightly by any means. The record will reflect that I have called many times on this street and in this area over here with the problem with the dirt bikes. So I just would like the records to reflect that as well.
Okay, I'll just respond to your comments. I'm not challenging Mr. Jefferson. The comment just came across as if get it from by my house. But I understand. I appreciate you.
I just didn't want you to think that I was taking that lightly. I mean, that was, the way that I understood it. You said that the council, and including me, you felt that we were taking that lightly. But the record will reflect that the police department has been called many times on this particular issue here.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to make comments at this time?
No other hands are raised.
Okay, we'll move on to old business. We have open a public hearing on ordinance number 2020-2160. Mr. Caroline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the city of Wake City, Florida, amending the future land use plan map of the city of Wake City comprehensive plan as amended, relating to an amendment of more than 10 acres of land pursuant to application CPA 20-04 by the property owner of said acreage under the amendment procedures established. What? I'm sorry, my screen was flickering.
That's me. I'm sorry. I'm sharing the agenda.
An ordinance of the city of Wake City, Florida, amending the future land use plan map of the city of Wake City comprehensive plan as amended, relating to an amendment of more than 10 acres of land pursuant to an application CPA 20-04 by the property owner of said acreage under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 Florida statutes as amended, providing for changing the future land use classification from county residential low density to city residential medium density of certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Wake City, Florida, providing severabilities, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date period.
Okay, the first reading was July 20th, 2020. Is there any public comments on this ordinance?
Nobody has their hand raised.
Okay, we'll move into adoption of ordinance 2020-2160.
An
Mr.
ordinance
Mayor,
of the
move
city.
approve. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
No, sir, I wasn't speaking.
Mayor, this is Cobra Line. Did you say 2161 and 2160 adoption?
2160.
I apologize.
Which one did you read? 2161?
I began 61. I apologize for interrupting. I think you're ready for a motion.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second on, no, we haven't. Okay. Mr. Jefferson, you were making a motion?
Yes, sir. I enter a motion for the approval of resolution number 2020-2160.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Yes.
Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next we're to open a public hearing on ordinance 2020-2161. Mr. Carolina, did you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Wake City, Florida, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Wake City land development regulations as amended, relating to the rezoning of 10 or more contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z 20-05 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from county residential single family 2 to city residential single family 1 of certain lands within corporate limits of the City of Wake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, the first reading of this was also July 20th, 2020. Is there any public comments on this ordinance?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll close the hearing and move into adoption of ordinance 2020-2161.
Move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-2161.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next we'll move into new business and we have ordinance number 2020-2165 on first reading. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Wake City, Florida, pursuant to petition number ANX 20-01 relating to voluntary annexation, making findings, annexing certain real property located in Columbia County, Florida, which is reasonably compact and contiguous to the boundaries of the City of Wake City, Florida, into the boundaries of the City of Wake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, we'll move into adoption of ordinance 2020-2165 on first reading.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-2165.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next we'll move into resolutions. We have city council resolution.
Mayor, can I just say a couple things about that last motion?
Sure, absolutely.
I want to make sure that the public is very aware that all we're doing is expanding the city's boundaries to go east for economic development. It does not change any ownerships. It does not change any uses. The duck and alligator hunting are grandfathered. So basically the only change this affects is that would be now inside the city's boundaries once the final public hearing is held and if it's adopted. That's all. There is no other changes.
Hey, thank you for clearing that up for everybody.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll move into city council resolution 2020-087. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of City of Wake City, Florida, authorizing the city to write off delinquent utility accounts for a period of time ending September 30th, 2018, finding the delinquent utility accounts to be uncollectible and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, I think this is where Mr. Bowden wanted to speak to this one.
Maybe. Does he have to be unmuted? Thank you.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're ready to go.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to address this issue. I took the time to read over and look down through the names of a lot of the people who are the debt being written off. I got a couple of questions. One is, what does the city do to collect the debt before it get to this point?
I can answer that question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
What the city does is that as somebody leaves, whenever they close out an account, they try to collect any amounts that are outstanding at that time. Obviously, we're not capable of doing that. And then sometimes we also have bankruptcies that go on the list. But we had a company that was actually trying to collect for us. They were not very successful. And so we now have a new company that doesn't charge us anything. And what they do is as they collect on the account, then what they do is they charge the individual for that amount. But we have it out there, and so it's out there, but some of these are very old. They go back 2 years. Typically, and the reason that we write them off is because we have to, according to GASB, because we're overstating the assets if we do not. But we do have a company that does do that.
now,
Thank you.
Ms. Duncan,
I see a couple of them, Mr. Mayor.
so technically, if that person comes back and tries to get another account.
Yes, anytime anybody comes back to the city, the ladies in the utility customer service department, what they do is they go through the accounts, even though they're on there and they're listed as being written off, that we still have the balances in there. So whenever anybody comes in to try to obtain service again, then we require that they not get service until such time as they pay back the amount that was owed previously.
Do you have anything in place that would perhaps maybe not prevent? I think some of the time what a person that can't take care of the back payment would allow the utility to be open in another person's name. Is there any way to get around that? I'm concerned because I'm looking at.
What we try to do, Mr. Bowden, is that we try to go back, and anybody who comes in, we try to get as much information as we can on them up front, because if you have somebody who comes in and they open it up in their name only, but then they have somebody else in their household who might, eventually take it over that account. And what we try to do is get as much information as we can at the time whenever we set up the new account to make that available.
Okay.
And yes, we do have the ladies down in customer service are very diligent. We have a couple of them, in fact, that are very diligent about collecting money. And so, they will call, and they do that. They do call them and let people know that they're behind. But whenever they do get behind, sometimes, well, like for right now, the council has decided to they had put off for a while collecting on anybody and not shutting their accounts off. Well, obviously, a couple of years from now, that may be problematic because the amount may go up. But either way, we try to collect as we can, and we do try to work with the customers as much as we can. But if they get, and my feeling is that once you get kind of 2 months behind, then that's difficult for anybody to pay beyond that. But we do try to collect beyond then.
I was about to ask this other question, Mayor, and this will be my last one. I see several on here where the bill is at least $2,000. If that's $2,000 over a period of time, and that's a one-time bill that it did not pay.
Yes, well, it could be several of them. So it depends, and it depends on what the classification was. Obviously, if it was a commercial account, then it wouldn't take very long to, rack up a bill that's $2,000. I would have to go look and specifically look at the ones that you're referring to. But I do try to impress to the ladies downstairs that, we can't let anybody get too far into it, because they will have much more difficulty trying to pay it back later if they do. But we're trying to clean all of that up, and they have been successful at it, and they're working on it all day, every day, generally, because they're asking people and calling them and trying to rectify it.
So what's your policy in terms of how far you'll let person get into the real? 2 months, 1 month?
It also depends on at particular times having to do with cutoffs. So we try to they're trying to get back to their regular cutoff schedules, which part of that I think may have been as a result of those getting backed up. I don't remember specifically the reason, but as long as they're doing the cutoffs when they need to, then typically they would not get too far along before they get too far out.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion by council for City Council Resolution 2020-087?
Move for the adoption of Resolution 2020-087.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions, and maybe Ms. Duncan can answer them. But specific to the commercial accounts, when I went through the list, I know some of them were bankruptcies. I noticed a lot of the adult arcades, and I say a lot, but a couple. And I'm seeing commercial accounts who are still in business. For example, on there was N&W Cleaners. They've not gone out of business, they're still in business, but we're about to write off a utility debt for them. So I'm just curious as to what happens in those cases for those commercial accounts.
Well, in the case of N&W Cleaners, I think that the owner passed away, so I don't know if there was something related to that.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot as far as each individual account. I used them as an example because I've seen them on there, and it kind of stuck out to me that I've gone to N&W Cleaners since I was a child, and as far as I know, they've always been in service. So I was just in business. So I just am confused as to how we can write off that debt.
I will check with downstairs tomorrow and find out why that one is on there necessarily, but I do know that there may have been, I don't know if there was a change in the ownership from the time that the owner passed away, and all I can think of is it was probably something related to that, but I will check on that.
And in that same vein, I noticed CSX Railroad, which is a publicly traded company, on there as well. And so I don't believe they're out of business. So that's another one that kind of concerned me. And then the second question that I have, Mr. Mayor, is I noticed some names on there, and I'm not going to say the individuals, but the list is public. But I noticed some names of folks that do a good amount of business with the city. And I see that they have outstanding accounts that we're about to write off. So my question is, what happens in that case when we're about to write off a debt that we can't collect, but a particular individual or a company comes back to the city and asks for assistance working through, I don't know, housing or some other issue? Do we identify that?
Yes, that's what we tried to do. Yes.
Okay. Those were my questions.
Okay, anything else from council? If not, Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Okay, next is City Council Resolution 2020-091. Mr. Caroline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Wake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of a subordination agreement, subordinating the city's utility interest to the Florida Department of Transportation in real property owned by the city and identified as a 20-foot utility easement, recorded in official records book 1021 at page 698 and located along State Road 247, period.
Is there a motion of City Council Resolution 2020-091?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of Resolution 2020-091.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next, we have City Council Resolution 2020-092. Mr. Caroline, do you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Wake City, Florida, ratifying the mayor's extension of the state of emergency arising from the COVID-19 public health emergency, period.
Is there a motion of City Council Resolution 2020-092?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-092.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution number 2020-093. Mr. Governor, would you read that by title?
A resolution of City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, accepting the bid from Anderson Columbia Company Incorporated for resurfacing, sealing, and striping of parking area at the utility annex. Period.
Is there a motion as to City Council Resolution number 2020-093?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-093.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution number 2020-094. Mr. Governor, would you read this by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of an agreement with the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council to receive comprehensive planning services for 12 months beginning October 1, 2020, and for a fixed fee amount of $23,500.00. Period.
Is there a motion as to City Council Resolution 2020-094?
Move for
Mr.
the
Mayor.
adoption of. Go ahead,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Green.
Ms. Moses.
You go ahead.
I move for the adoption of resolution 2020-094.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any comments? As I always say, this is a good deal they do for us, and they provide a good service. Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2020-099. Mr. Governor, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, calling for an election to be held November 3rd, 2020, for the election of a council member for District 13, and directing the city clerk to coordinate arrangements for said election with the Columbia County Supervisor of Elections, and directing the clerk to publish notice of the election. Period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution 2020-099?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval.
94.
I move for the approval of resolution number 2020-099.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mayor Witt.
Yes.
Mayor? Mayor, Mr. Loker would like to speak about the next one after it's read.
Okay. Mr. Will?
Do you want him to speak now or after it's read?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Sorry for the too many buttons. Regarding this amendment, going to amendment number 8, City Charter Amendment 8, Section 603, City Attorney. Says Section 603 of the City Charter was enacted during 1968 and has not been amended. Shall Section 603 of the City Charter be amended to provide the qualifications, powers, duties, and term of the city attorney position as a charter officer? That's not true. That did not happen during the charter review process. I have previously spoken to the city manager about this. I was the one that brought this up. There was a question about what the qualifications and terms and whatever of the employment was, but it was never discussed nor approved by the Charter Review Board to make this position a charter officer. This is clearly, and Mr. Coblon should know that, I would suggest, and the city attorney and the city manager should go back and listen to the audio This was never done to make the city attorney position as a charter officer. That's wishful thinking. This is willful and intentionally done for a wrongful purpose to put an item in front of the public that was never approved by the Charter Review Commission. I respectfully ask that this be reviewed and be removed from the charter, from this resolution, as it is clearly not true and done willfully to be not true. That's my only comments. I suggest that the city council review this, as you clearly have the power to do that. Thank you very much, Your Honor. That's it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Coberline, you want to read this first and then respond to that?
Yes, sir, sure. City Council Resolution number 2020-100. Oh, excuse me.
It is 100.
Yes, it is. Thank you. The election word threw me off, Mayor. So,
Yeah.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, calling for an election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, for the submission of 8 proposed amendments to the city charter related to the recommendations of the city's Charter Review Board, and directing the city clerk to coordinate arrangements for said election with the Columbia County Supervisor of Elections, and directing the publication of a notice of the election period.
Okay. Did you want to address Mr. Lilker's comments, or?
I can advise the board. I don't wish to address Mr. Wilker, Mayor, but I'll advise the board of the status of this resolution. The Charter Review Board met over the summer. Subsequent to that, ordinance number 2020-2158 went through 2 public readings along with a public advertisement. And the council approved that ordinance unanimously, which subsequently resulted in the resolution to go to the voters. We heard similar arguments then. I think this is a little bit different, but I'd like everyone to know that I believe the city attorney's been a charter position since 1968, perhaps before then. I'm not sure what the charter said then, but if you'll go to the charter, section 603, the city attorney has been a charter member or charter position for decades.
Okay. Is there a motion by City Council on City Council Resolution 2020-100?
Move for the adoption of resolution 2020-100.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, call the roll, please.
Ms. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Okay, next is Departmental Administration, discussion regarding backup for communications, media technology. Mr. Helfenberger.
Back on September 9th, I believe, we had a failure of the Zoom. They had 2 different phone lines. One of them was discontinued somewhere between our workshop and our city council meeting. We went to the other line subsequently. We also check their website daily and have signed up for notifications. And we also review the phone lines and the whole working of the system 3 hours before a council meeting, as well as 1 hour before a council meeting. Still, that cannot guarantee that we'll have this service available when we need it. The only way to do a backup would be, it would have to probably be publicly noticed, along with the notice for the virtual meeting that we currently put out. That could cause a great deal of confusion to people that are looking to connect to the city via the communications media technology that we're using with Zoom. The alternate is not to put out a secondary backup notice, which would be clearer, but then if the media should fail during the meeting, we'd have to discontinue it again and then reschedule later on. Now, I'm also hopeful that at some point here, we'll be going back to in-person meetings and that this COVID emergency will be behind us. But right now, I'm looking for just a little guidance from the city council as to which route they would prefer us to take as far as either noticing the meetings with a backup media technology or just leaving it as is and taking our chances that the communication media will work.
Okay, anybody have any comments or recommendations?
Well, I think until we go back to our regular meeting, I think a backup would be best for us for the future because of what happened the other day.
I agree.
I agree. I think we need some form of backup system because if it fails, well, then there's nothing. And I just feel the need for a backup of some sort.
Mr. Mayor, I would have a question maybe for IT. Maybe IT could answer it.
Sure.
If we public noticed, for example, a Zoom meeting as the primary platform, and again, just for example, a WebEx meeting as the backup or secondary meeting in the event that Zoom were to go down, my question for IT is, would it be possible that both platforms are up and running at the same time so that the transition would be seamless? In other words, how difficult would it be for the city to open up both platforms at the same time so that we could just make a seamless transition, or is that unrealistic?
We couldn't really do the full WebEx as a backup at the same time, but my thought was we could do a conference call as a backup. And if Zoom failed, we'd all hop on that conference call. We wouldn't have video, but I don't know if that's a legal requirement or not. And I would start up that conference call every meeting in case somebody accidentally connects to that.
So then it would be, what I'm hearing you say is it would be preferable if we had Zoom, for example, as our primary source, but to go ahead and also just publish the conference call number. It would have to be a local phone number, I'm sure, or a 1-800 number and a local number. And then people could call in on that one if they chose to, and we can move to that as a secondary.
It would be a WebEx conference call, so it would still have the 800 number that we used to use and the long distance number. We could advertise both. So we could advertise it as wording somehow like, if Zoom should fail, please call this number and enter this participant ID.
And Mr. Coberline, not to put you on the spot, but would that, or even Ms. Sykes maybe could answer, would that be acceptable to the public if the 1-800 number were without video, were a secondary in the event that Zoom went down?
Fred, you want to go first?
Sure. Mr. Green, my understanding is that the question is whether or not a backup toll-free number would be sufficient if the video feed went down.
Correct.
And okay. The issue you may have there is whether or not the information or the materials are provided to the public in advance. There is nothing wrong with having a telephonic meeting. However, if you've already stated that you're going to have a in-person or a virtual meeting, then you are suggesting that the materials be made available at that time. And so you may have a legal issue there if the video feed went down and you're advertising that you'll have a virtual meeting. This, that issue has not been tested in the courts in Florida. It may have been somewhere throughout the nation where they've been doing virtual meetings for some time.
But if part of that advertisement also included the notice of the backup platform, in other words, at the same time that we're noticing the Zoom virtual meeting, we're also noticing the backup platform as the telephonic only. So then folks that maybe would want materials could get those materials at City Hall ahead of time. Would that be acceptable or not?
That would be more protection. The clerk's office and my office were working on this last week. We believe that we could probably craft a notice that would let the public know how to receive the materials and not rely on just the video feed as it was presented this evening.
And then and one more question I would have. I know that the public hearings are a little more stringent, or quite a bit more stringent. So would that be a different standard to meet for public hearings versus a regular city council meeting, for example?
It is a different standard because it is a hearing and the public are allowed to present evidence and testimony, as we always open it up for testimony. Depending on the type of hearing, we have legislative where we're passing laws that apply to everybody, and then we have quasi-judicial where we're impacting just certain property owners, as we've done tonight on land use matters. And so, but taking in a general sense with legislative hearings, we could go back and look at our CMT rules that we passed some months ago, and there are provisions in there that tell people how to get their exhibits to the city. Thinking back out loud on that and speaking to you, Mr. Green, and the others, I believe that we would likely already be covered because we do require an interested person to submit their materials in advance of the meeting. Do not rely on the city's technology to share a computer screen. And if I'm mistaken there based on my memory, and my memory does fail me often, I'll ask Ms. Sykes if she remembers differently, not to put her on the point there. But again, Mr. Green, I think that our meeting rules on these CMT procedures require interested persons to submit their materials well in advance of the meeting.
Super, thank you. Ms. Sykes, did you want to add anything?
We do have the notice that does state they have to provide their information. I believe it's by noon of the day of the meeting, no later than that. The concern that I had was very much one that you touched on, was the public hearing process, and then the confusion that could be portrayed out there with advertising two different platforms. As long as IT can manage it and we can properly capture all those records like we need to, then I will support whichever direction the council would like to go on that. I think it could be very confusing to your general public.
So, Mr. Mayor, for me, I think what I heard is that having Zoom as a primary platform and a WebEx number that is a 1-800 number that would cost nothing to our citizens, IT could manage that. And it seems to me as a backup, and it seems to me that that would be a prudent measure.
I think so too. And it seems to be the consensus. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
Okay. Direction then, so.
Sure.
And hopefully we won't need it, but we'll have it if we do. So I think, Mr. Helfenberger, you need any more guidance?
No, that'll help. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any comments to council?
Mr. Mayor, I would have a request that I would like to make.
Sure.
From just out of an abundance of caution and really more for my personal education, if the city attorney could provide to the council where the city attorney is a charter member in the charter, a charter officer rather in the charter. I would just, if he could at his convenience, just email that to us so that we have it available in the event that we need that or we need to identify that.
All right. Anybody else?
Mayor,
Yes.
hopefully I can just save us all some time, and then of course taxpayers some money here. It's in section 603 as it states, which is available at library.municode.com, where the city charter is. 603 states, the city shall appoint a city manager and such assistant city attorneys as it deems necessary, who shall act as legal advisors to the city and all of its officers in matters relating to their official duties. The city attorney shall approve all contracts of the municipality before the same shall become effective, when which approval shall appear on every city contract signed by the city attorney, period. The subject line of the first sentence says the council shall appoint a city attorney, and that's in the city charter. If you take a look at, as comparison, section 306 of the charter, you'll see that the same subject line applies. The council shall appoint a city clerk, period. And then if you look at section 401, you'll find that the same subject of that first sentence applies. The city council shall appoint a city manager for an indefinite term, period. So each of those positions are charter officers, and that's very consistent with the charters around the state.
Outstanding. Thank you for clearing that up, Mr. Coberline. I appreciate you spelling that out for me, and thank you so much. It makes it easy.
Okay,
Anytime.
anything else by council? If not, we'll be adjourned. Thank y'all all, and thanks everybody for participating.
Thank you.